Iraq is a nation in flight. It's estimated that almost 4 million people have been forced from their homes. 2 million of them have left the country. Those who can afford to flee are, to a great extent, the educated, the professionals, the middle class so desperately needed to build a stable Iraq. It's a very personal story for Newsweek senior writer Lorraine Ali. She has family members still trying to escape Iraq. She joins us from Los Angeles. And with me here in Washington, Ken Bacon. He was Pentagon spokesman during the Clinton administration, now president of Refugees International. Ken, this is being called the worst refugee crisis, quickly becoming the worst refugee crisis in the world, worse than Darfur. Yet, I don't think a lot of Americans understand that.
Well, I think they're beginning to, and they will by the end of the year, because it is growing at a very rapid rate. As you said, 2 million have left the country already. They're leaving at the rate of 100,000 a month. So we're going to have another 1 million refugees outside the country, and the internal displacement is increasing by almost that rate. So we'll have another 1 million displaced internally by the end of the year.
Lorraine, as we mentioned, you have family members who are still in Baghdad. You have some who have fled to other countries, Jordan, I believe. Give us the personal side of this.
Well, it's one thing when you hear, that 2 million have fled, almost that many are displaced inside Iraq. It's another when they're your uncles, aunts, and cousins. And I have every example in my family. I have family members trapped in Baghdad. I have family members whose houses were taken over by insurgents and had to flee inside of Iraq. And I have others that are displaced, Syria, Jordan, and even Germany.
How does it leave you feeling? Can you help them?
It's really hard. We feel really helpless. We can help in the way of maybe sending money and helping out in that way, but we can't help them get visas into Jordan, into Syria, because those countries have sealed off their borders because there's been such a huge influx of Iraqis. And really, we can't even help them get to the U.S. because it's so difficult to get Iraqis into the U.S. So we feel really helpless about it.
In fact, Ken, take a look at this graphic. This really lays out where these displaced persons are going. Syria has taken up to 1 million Iraqi refugees. Jordan, 750,000. Iran, a little more than 50,000. Lebanon, 40. Egypt, 20 to 80,000. What's it doing to those countries?
Well, the biggest burden is being absorbed by Syria and Jordan. The Syrians have been enormously generous, but it's beginning to hurt both these countries. Clearly, real estate prices have been driven up, rents in Damascus. These are generally urban refugees. They're not in camps as they are in Darfur. They have been absorbed by families. They've bought houses on the open market or rented apartments. So it's having a real impact on these economies.
And what's the impact going to be on Iraq? That you tackle, Lorraine, in an article in Newsweek in the March 19th issue. You write, quote, "The exodus has not only scattered my family, it has hollowed out Iraq's most skilled classes, doctors, engineers, managers, and bureaucrats. Baghdad was once home to one of the most educated populaces in the Middle East. Many were part of a generation of middle-class professionals who, during the 1970s, transformed Iraq into the Middle East's most diversified economy." If there is such a brain drain there now, Lorraine, what's the future of the country? Will it return to an educated class, or could it perhaps leave Iraq in the hands of religious fundamentalists?
See, I worry about that because even if we could secure the city tomorrow, I don't know who's there to run it and who's there to rebuild a healthy society. I mean, you're talking about the least sectarian slice of society being gone. So I don't know who will be there. And, when you have your doctors, engineers, professionals gone, then, it's kind of left up to who's left in the city to rebuild it. In my alone, we have engineers. I have a curator that was at the Museum of Baghdad, people that were running in the oil ministry. Those people are gone now.
Another big piece of this, Ken, too, is the fact that the United States isn't taking many Iraqi refugees, even though it was the United States that invaded Iraq in 2005. They took in 18. 2006, 202, projected to take 7,000 in 2007, but that's less than Sweden took last year. Does the U.S. need to step up to the plate here?
Well, absolutely. I think the U.S. particularly has to focus on some of the most vulnerable people, and those are people who work for the U.S. as translators, as drivers, as assistants, both for the government, the military, the State Department, but also for CNN, for BBC, for the New York Times, for Newsweek. These are people who have risked their lives to help Americans in Iraq. Many of them have had to flee because their kids have been kidnapped, their houses have been targeted, their cars have been bombed. So they're now in Amman or Damascus, trying to get to the U.S. and having a very difficult time.
Well, it's good work that your organization is doing, Ken. Great article this week, Lorraine. Best of luck to you and your family. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And when we come back, a look at another change coming in Year 5. Increased congressional scrutiny of reconstruction spending in Iraq. This is a special edition of This Week at War. Year 5 begins.